Labour made a massive mistake, in my opinion, by not calling for an election a month ago. We could have had that election by now, and to be honest, we could have won it. The longer that we leave Johnson in power, the longer that he's able to kind of do all his shenanigans, it's going to be harder and harder the longer that he's able to just reinforce the narrative that he's pushed back against Parliament and he's the one who's really working in the interests of working people. The party that sets the terms of the election is the party that wins the election. If Johnson makes it about people versus Parliament, and we're Parliament, we're not going to win. Labour can only really win the next election if it makes it about more than Brexit. If we are just the party of Remain, we won't be playing the election on our terms. We have to make this election about something bigger. And for me, this is the last election potentially we'll have to solve the climate crisis. We have 10 years. And if we lose 5 of those to another Tory government that isn't going to do anything to decarbonise our economy by 2030, then there's a chance we will never make that target. This election is important for so many reasons, because there's so much suffering in society and because we really need to change the way our economy works. If Labour can deliver that narrative and actually bring people together around something much bigger than Brexit, then that's the only way we'll stand a chance. We need to focus on class and on class politics, because the current mainstream economic order that we have is basically just class war from above. It's a tiny bunch of people at the top saying, we're going to implement all these policies, we're going to cut taxes, we're going to deregulate, it's going to make all the rest of you better off over the long term, just trust us. And actually all it ends up doing is sucking up power and wealth to the very top. As long as Labour is centering class politics in the analysis, centering that distinction between the many and the few, what I call between people who live off work and people who live off wealth, then that is going to cut through. Actually saying, no, we are the Labour Party. We are accountable to organised labour, to a social movement, to working people throughout this country. And we have their interests, not the interests of the 1%, at heart. That's the only way we're going to resonate with the vast majority of people. I do think that the party recently has gotten bogged down in parliamentary procedure and talking about, subsection B, clause D of some withdrawal agreement that just doesn't resonate with the vast majority of people. We need to be strategising, we need to be doing stuff in Parliament, but when the Labour Party is speaking to people, it needs to be delivering a strong message, not defend democracy like we've been seeing recently, but actually build democracy. It just isn't going to make sense to most people to say, you have all these brilliant, wonderful freedoms and Boris Johnson is threatening to take them away, because most people don't feel like they have those freedoms. They don't feel like they have those rights. We need to say, we know that you feel alienated from the political process, that you feel like you don't have any power in your workplace, in your community. We are here to push back against that and to build a system in which you do have control. I think the longer that we have all these MPs working in Parliament and trying to subvert Johnson's plans through parliamentary procedure, the more difficult it is to realise quite how much disdain most people have for parliamentary procedure and actually a lot of MPs. MPs have a big reputational issue and Parliament has a big reputational issue. And if we're doing all our fighting on those planes, we're not going to win. So we need an election. We need to reinvigorate our narrative by just recentering those class dynamics and talking once again about the things that matter, about the division between the many and the few, about how our economy isn't working, and about how our environment is on the verge of collapse. Make sure that you like Double Down News and that you support them on Patreon. It's so important that we have kind of new media organisations pushing back against the constant barrage that we get from some in the mainstream media. It's really important that we support them and that we build a new media. Join the future of journalism. Join Double Down News on Patreon.